Wow. Hi there, welcome to Creating the Future's board meeting.
Welcome, everyone.
I am Hilda Gottlieb with Creating the Future.
I'm Dimitri Petropoulos with Creating the Future.
And why don't we go down just across the screen. Alexandra, you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Alexandra Peters, member of the board in New York, New York.
Cool. And Dave Renz, our guest today.
I'm Dave Renz with the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and specifically the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership.
Really good having you here.
Welcome.
Ms. Tierney.
I'm Erin Tierney, and I'm with the Creating the Future board.
Gail.
I'm Gail Valeriot, and I'm with the Creating the Future board. I do consulting work in Guelph, Ontario, Canada.
Hey. Mark Eckhart.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Eckhart. I'm also a board member. I'm a partner in a chief operating officer for a company called Common. We launch green and sustainable businesses through a distributed branding model. So good to see everyone.
You as well. We've got the marks together, so I don't know if this is dangerous or not.
Squared.
Mr. Riffey.
Hi, I'm Mark Riffey. I'm a board member, and I'm from Columbia Falls, Montana, which is near Glacier Park.
Every time you say that, it just sounds gorgeous. And Sydney.
Hi, I'm Sydney Hogro, board member. I'm in New Jersey, and during the day I work for the Community Foundation of South Jersey.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, welcome everybody, and I will hand the meeting over to Alexandra, who is chairing today.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to everybody who's watching on the Walking the Talk blog and participating on Twitter. And if you want to participate on Twitter, it's the hashtag #CTFuture. And do join in, because we'll read your comments and as we can. So, and I particularly want to welcome Dave Renz, who is about the most prolific person I've ever read other than Hildy. And Dave, can you tell us a little bit about your work and what brought you to where you are now?
Well, I'm not. When you say where I am now, do you mean in front of the screen here with the rest of you? Or?
No, I meant really the work you're doing now and the particular path that brought you to that.
Well, I actually have a fairly checkered career. As I tell folks sometimes, I have a doctorate in organization theory and design, and I've always I guess applied that in the public service environment. That's always been more the environment I've been interested in. Started off working with government agencies. I am a recovering bureaucrat. And some folks wonder if that's a 12-step program, but it's 24 steps because there's so many forms to complete. But started working with a university in Minneapolis, which is where I was, my government services in Minnesota, and started working with the University of St. Thomas and helped them create a nonprofit center, and was getting more involved in that, and that led me into the network of academic centers that resulted in me moving to Kansas City, where I direct the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership. It's a part of the Department of Public Affairs, so we have a Master's in Public Administration program, but it has an emphasis in nonprofit management as one of the emphasis areas. And I've always been interested in organizations, organizational effectiveness, and governance, and just continue to try to deal with that in lots of different ways. Sorry for the phone. I haven't got a way to unplug that. So I've just been working with nonprofits. We're proud of the fact that the Midwest Center is a university-based academic center that I think probably is among the best at community engagement. Our focus is really about being out in the community and bridging the worlds of research and theory with the innovations and creative things that are going on at the street level. And hopefully we're good at helping connect those two worlds. I hope my writing and research builds those linkages.
Great. Well, welcome. I mean, we're delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for coming and participating.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. Hildy said that I mean, part of what I try to understand is innovations in governance, and so Hildy was describing what was going on and invited me to come watch, and so that's what I'm here to do.
Oh, we want you to do more than watch. We want you to speak up.
Well, I'm a digital voyeur today for the most part, but.
Well, we're so glad you're here.
No, you could get in trouble with that comment, Dave.
It wouldn't even be the first time today I've gotten myself in trouble with my smart remarks, so I'll try to control the humor, or at least the attempts thereof.
I don't know, nobody else here does that, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Jump on in with that one.
So, awesomeness. It is our custom to begin every meeting by talking about something awesome, something fantastic, something interesting that's been going on with us. And who'd like to start?
I do.
Okay, Hildy, go ahead.
I do, because I never do, and so I have two. I have a work awesome, an us awesome, and I have a personal awesome. The work awesome is that we are officially awesome. And you guys knew this, but there is a new sort of spin-off of a family foundation called the Harness Foundation, which is called the Awesome Without Borders Foundation. And they give weekly awards to organizations and groups that are doing things that are awesome. And we were actually one of the even more awesomer things is that we were not. What they usually do is go through an application process. So if you think you're awesome, then you apply. But they came to us and asked us to apply.
Wow,
and
even more awesome.
So we filled out a couple of paragraphs and sent it off, and we are officially awesome. About 2 weeks ago, we were their weekly awesome organization for exactly what we're doing right here. And with that came a $1,000 award, and we used that in part to increase the bandwidth here so that we could do more of this. So,
That's great.
So you guys, we are officially all awesome. And Dave, you are now part of the awesomeness. The personal awesome is that, and now I'm going to go back and give a little bit of backstory, and Mark Eckhart, you will appreciate this more than anybody because you have such a relationship with my kid. Most of you guys know that Lizzie is in Hollywood and is making her way, wanting to be a director. She's wanted to make movies since she was, about this big. And when she was in between gigs about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, she wound up doing work on the sequel to what quickly became a cult classic, which is a beyond B movie. If they made F movies and Q movies, this is one of those horrifically horrible, low budget horror films called Birdemic.
Called what?
Birdemic. Like epidemic.
Epidemic, only birds. And these
right.
horribly computer-generated birds attack things and fall from the sky. And from what I gather, in the first Birdemic, you could only ward them off with coat hangers. I mean, it's like, and so it's become like this, midnight movie where kids get drunk and stoned and go watch this thing. Well, Lizzie wound up working on Birdemic 2. And she wound up, between gigs last year, she needed the money, it was weekend stuff, and she wound up being the assistant director on Birdemic 2, which meant that she was basically the one making things work on the ground. Okay, so that's all the backstory. It finally came out, and of course it's one of those straight to DVD, except in small theaters where they do a one-night midnight showing. And they're doing a one-night midnight showing here in Tucson this Friday night. And my kid is going to be on the stage afterwards doing a Q&A with the assistant director. This wretchedly horrible horror movie. So, yeah, Mark, you're smiling. You could see. Can't you just picture that?
It's perfect.
Can't you just picture it, Lizzie?
Yeah.
And you guys need to picture. My kid is, maybe 105 pounds soaking wet with a mohawk, and.
Yeah.
And so her up on the stage answering questions about this ridiculously bad horror movie is just going to be, that is like super awesome. So yeah.
I'm sharing those also. So Dave, if I may, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take this from
No,
Alexander.
go ahead, Dimitri.
No, it's yours.
Dave, we ask that everyone offer an awesome. So
you can be thinking of one as you're.
So yes, if you don't have one immediately, think of one and you'll kind of get a feel for the kinds of awesomes, because Hildy's awesome is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Mine are usually low key. That's why I was jumping up and down with mine.
And having you here is pretty awesome, Dave. So, anybody else want to jump in? Go ahead, Gail.
I have two as well. Sorry, I'll be brief as I can with them. But the first one, I hope, is already known to this board, and that is that 1 month from today, Hildy and Dimitri will be in Southern Ontario, which we are so thrilled about, for 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks of presentations and meeting people and connecting and building for what we hope will be a much more substantial period of time and program in the near future. But we are so thrilled to be the hosts. Jane Garthson, Karen Smith, Anne McKay, and myself have been working together to pull this together, and we have venues in Toronto, Hamilton, Kitchener-Waterloo, and London. And the people with whom we are working and who will be meeting Hildy and Dimitri are thrilled that this is happening. So, and it's, you know, no small coup to be able to pull anything together in July in this neck of the woods when everyone migrates north to cottages. So we are really quite pleased, and we'll have them here, you know, in person, which is really, really fun. So that's one of our awesomes. The other is a personal one, and that is I spent the weekend. Last weekend, Kelly and I spent the weekend with our son in the area where he works for the summer, which is in Northern Ontario and near the Ottawa area, and got to see the results of his handiwork as he has apprenticed or learned, I don't know if it's a formal apprenticeship, in log home construction. And if I can share, I will try to share at least one photo with you so that you can see the kind of work that he does. But we were wowed by not only his work, but just spending the time. We hiked and we canoed and we paddled and we talked and we played games, and it's such a lovely time for 3 days. And so this is somebody who we get to see approximately 6 days a year. So every second is like gold, and it was just so lovely to be with him.
That's great. Thank you. Next, anyone want to?
I'll go.
Please, thank you.
Got a couple here. First, I still kind of wear the proud hat of a new parent. I have a 3-year-old daughter and an 8-month-old daughter, and this weekend my wife and I piled the girls into the car. We headed off to the dog beach in Long Beach, and along the way just a kind of conversation ensued, and I asked my oldest daughter, who was really kind of like just obsessing over our youngest, Naya. I said, Amelia, it really seems like you care about Naya a whole lot. And she just sat back in her car seat and she said, yeah, she's my sister. I love her with all of my heart.
Oh. Write it down. Don't forget that.
Oh my gosh. And you know, my relationship with my siblings tends to be a little strange at times. So that was a real moment where I went, wow, isn't that beautiful? Who knew it could be like this? So just kind of just a beautiful, tender moment. On the work side, Common has welcomed and embraced the arrival of our Chief Strategy Officer, Kathleen Paler. So she's officially a member of the Common team. She's an amazing woman who just brings just incredible wisdom and perspective and insight, and she's going to be truly, truly helping us make great strides in, you know, clarifying what we're doing, why it's special, and uniquely positioned to contribute in a very positive way, but also to help us understand and do some very interesting and important healing around the relationship between money and how money is exchanged between investors and social entrepreneurs, and the possibilities that that money can actually represent in terms of reflecting personal visions and real potential to do good versus, increase the level of toxicity throughout the world.
Right.
Wow.
Terrific. Thanks.
Yeah, so those are my two awesomes.
They're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Next, anybody? Well, I have one.
Okay.
Actually, I have two. One is I have something to confess, which is that I wear a pedometer all the time. And I started doing this because somebody told me about this thing about 10,000 steps a day, which I don't know where the 10,000 idea comes from. But it's actually been sort of transformational for me because I love to walk, and if you live in New York City, it's the reverse of what people think. You walk everywhere, and what I find is that I walk between, I don't know, 14,000 and 20,000 steps a day in New York. When I'm in the country, I walk 4,000 to 6,000 steps,
Wow.
which is really interesting. And what it's done is as my husband was saying to me the other night, why are you walking up and down? Why are you brushing your teeth? It's because I'm almost at 14,000 and I just want to get over this. It's become, it's a little excessive, but it's sort of, I keep moving. It's great. And the other thing is, I think I've mentioned before, I've sort of my obsession and fascination with the beavers in the beaver pond at our house.
I knew exactly as you said. I knew what was coming.
You knew what was coming, right? And last week, a guy who works locally said to me, you have to get rid of those beavers because they're flooding your whole property, and I don't care. It's just water coming up. It's actually nowhere near my house anyway. But I also feel like it's their land too. It's, we jointly live on this property, and so by a curious coincidence, and he said to me, "You've got to drop the water level," and I said, "I don't drop the water level. To me, that's a bit like bloodletting. I'm not sure why it would." Curious coincidence. The next morning, I woke up and the level in the pond had dropped 2 feet. That is a lot of water. And so I kayaked out to it to look and see, because I couldn't get to the dam itself, and something had breached the dam, and clearly a human. And I just was so distressed. It was, I don't know, I love to just sit out there and watch them, and they've created this habitat where we have nesting herons and otter and muskrats, and it's just fantastic out there. But the great thing is this week, but in the course of this week, the water level has gone up 18 inches. And that's because they're amazing engineers. They're just brilliant. I could see last week that the first thing they did was protect there are at least 2 lodges, and this is when their kits are born. And so they didn't do anything about the dam until later in the week, and then they built the dam up again. So I'm walking around in my head all the time talking to people who would go and breach a beaver dam, thinking that humans are in control of these things and that we ought to try to overcome what everyone else is doing and what the other creatures on the earth are doing, and explaining to them, no, you idiots, they're smarter than we are. You couldn't do that. You couldn't rebuild a dam that is now completely functional. So that's my story.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's actually, it's interesting because it reminds me of really my awesome this morning, but also just how wonderful it has to be to look out in your yard and see this.
Yeah, and what I see is that other people don't see it. They see a bunch of water rats who are messing up the property, right?
Sure.
But it is wonderful, I agree. Come take photographs. Sydney is a wonderful photographer, if you don't know that.
My photos are mostly from my phone. I wish I had time to be an actual photographer with the camera out and about, but so my awesome this time around came from last week. I had the opportunity to bring remarks in an opening plenary for Grant Makers for Effective Organizations Learning Conference, and the remarks were in response to Andrew Zolli, who is executive director of PopTech, which is like a community of change agent innovators from all over. But also, he's the more importantly, he's the author of Resilience: Why Things Bounce Back. And so that's why it reminded me of the Beaver story, because it became more than just bringing remarks after I actually read his book in preparation for his opening plenary, and then what he delivered in talking about how you have to have a systems conversation to have a resilience conversation, and how regardless of whether it's for good or for bad, it's when you have an understanding of your system and where the vulnerabilities are, enables you to quickly bounce back. So when you talk about those beavers, for example, Alexandra, like they know of the vulnerability of someone coming and wrecking part of the dam, but they're able, because they know that, they're able to bounce back relatively quick. And it really started to connect 100 dots from along the way about how in the nonprofit sector those things are also, that is also the case. And it made me also wonder if in fact our approach, our being at the foundation, has been slightly short-sighted in that for us, when we talk about resilience, we're talking nonprofit to nonprofit as opposed to the system of nonprofits and the community as a whole. So it gave me a lot to really think about and work on, and it also is obviously very much aligned with the systems principle that we also uphold here as well. So that's my awesome.
That's great.
But the book is fantastic if you have a chance to take a look at it. It's called Resilience.
By Mark, what was that?
Mark, it's Andrew, did I say Mark? It's probably because of the Marks before me. Andrew Zolli, Zolli.
Great, thank you so much. Anybody else like to say anything?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. Went out to Portland in late May for my youngest son's 21st birthday. And I know it's hard to believe that a guy that looks 29 has a 21-year-old son. But,
we've never seen you before.
It's the new math. It's the new math.
Makes you look a lot younger.
Yeah. So anyway, it was the first time that the four of us had actually been able to go on a vacation together in several years. Due to grandkids and college and all that kind of stuff. And we hung around Portland and we visited a few breweries and that kind of thing. But one of the coolest thing about it was they had this thing called a Dog Beer Fest in Newport, Oregon, which is a coastal town. And one of the breweries happens to have a warehouse there. And what they did was they invited people to come to the warehouse. They had live music. They had 50 breweries, craft breweries, set up a table in the warehouse, and so 49 of them were competitors. And this all happens in the warehouse, and I mean, everybody and their mother is there, and their mother's dog. And the thing that struck me about this thing that was so cool, besides all the fun we had with our kids and stuff, was that there were groups of people in this room, in this warehouse, and you're surrounded by pallets full of beer and all this kind of stuff, where people who probably wouldn't have spoken to each other or made eye contact with each other or much less had a conversation for 15 minutes had to do so because their dogs were sniffing each other. And, big dogs, little dogs, didn't really matter. But the mixing of folks and the conversations, young, old, all walks of life, it was just pretty cool. And the dogs made that happen. And the beer probably, but most of the dogs.
That's great. Dimitri, Dave?
Aaron?
Okay, awesome. So, my husband, Mike, and I, we work a lot. We work too much. And so when we do have time to get away, we have huge affection for going to Canada. And not the least of which the people are awesome, and it's beautiful beyond words up there. But we also have to turn our phones off because we don't have an international phone plan and we won't get one. And so it actually forces us to take time off the grid. And we did that a couple of weeks ago. We went up to Victoria. We took the Clipper from Seattle to Victoria, which is good because like parts of I-5 fell in the water that weekend, so we couldn't take the road anyway. And but it was just a beautiful weekend, and everyone's talking about animals, and I've got my own little animal story. We did all the tourist stuff up there. The two biggest industries up in Victoria are government and tourism, so it's a very walkable city. We got to tour the provincial capital and learn all the history. It was great. But the very best part was this park called Beacon Hill Park, and they have this huge, Gail's shaking her head, they have this huge park there that includes peacocks that roam free and all this kind of stuff, but they also have a petting zoo. And inside the petting zoo, twice a day, they have a goat stampede when the goats come out in the morning and when they go back in for the evening. And so we happened to get there in the afternoon. We were playing with the goats. You go in and you take pictures of the goats and stuff like that. And when they're ready to go to bed for the evening and when the park's closing, they have everyone line up like it's the running of the frickin' bulls. And all like 50 to 60 goats, big, small, tiny, some were pooping. We're just running back to the barn. And was just the most fun I've had in quite some time. Mike and I just loved it. So my pitch is Victoria, go for the beautiful scenery, stay for the goats.
That's great.
Victoria is a pretty spectacular place.
I love it. We can't wait. We're trying to figure out what we can go back.
Oh, without cell phones, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No email.
And Alexander, I kind of shared Hildy's awesomes because having Lizzie, and actually Lizzie will be here Friday or this weekend, is just totally amazing. And being awesome is, you know, it sort of like spreads over all kinds of things. I will share in those two awesomes.
Great. And Dave, if you'd like to say tell us something awesome.
Since 2 seems to be the prevailing number here, I'll share 2 of the same sort. The first, which is the personal one, none of you know me, so this is all just sort of by extension, but I am thrilled to have just learned that the imminent grandchild, the first for my wife and I, will be a granddaughter, and I learned that a couple days ago.
Awesome. That's wonderful.
My son and his partner live on the Big Island in Hawaii, and so the baby is due at the end of September, so I will have to be there for a brief time in October. And
darn, that sounds terrible.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, well, it's a selfless act of a father, you know. I'm dedicated to my son as long as he's chosen the right places for it. And the other thing that actually is more of a work thing that's been fun in the last couple of weeks is that we created an initiative here at our center and in our department to grow and help social entrepreneurs, budding social entrepreneurs, become more successful and effective. It's called the Aaron Levitt Social Entrepreneurship Challenge. We rolled it out last October. I had a bunch of workshops in each team. It's students, but students collaborating with community folks, and in fact, our students are primarily mid-career adults, so they're mostly all out running agencies, or at least being in significant staff positions in agencies. Anyway, we had the program run through the year, and at the end of May, had the actual event. We had a social entrepreneurship symposium that we co-sponsored with the United States Association for Small Business Entrepreneurship and a couple of institutions, universities, but the end of that program was the Levitt Social Venture Challenge, where the 6 teams that had made it through the process each delivered their pitch, and they had previously, a couple days before that, filed business plans to explain what their venture was. They then were on stage, and we had about 120 people in the program, so in the audience, so it was fun that they had an audience. I wasn't quite sure how many people would show up, but it actually was well attended, and people had fun, and for the first year out of the box for this new program, we were actually delighted that it seemed to come together. Lots of ways to improve it, but it seemed to come together.
That's great.
Great.
It's fantastic.
Right,
Thank you.
think we heard from everybody, yeah? I just want to remind anybody who has joined us via the blog that it's the hashtag for Twitter is CTFuture. And please check in and comment on anything. Our fascinating lives. The consent agenda. I know you all got the minutes from, which is really an amazing record of a fascinating meeting.
I just have to tell you guys, typing those minutes because Drew wasn't here, and so I got to type the minutes. If there was a meeting I was going to type the minutes for, I literally had to write down everything you guys said. I mean, there's barely anything that you guys said that wasn't in these minutes. It was so brilliant to do. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it was really an interesting document. But I know you've all seen it. And any comments or any corrections or anything like that? Good. So can I hear a motion to approve the agenda for the May 2013 meeting?
I will move.
Is that Gail?
Yep.
I'll second.
Second, Hildy? Okay, thanks. So today we have so many possible things to talk about that really the first thing we need to do is decide what we're going to talk about. And Hildy sent out the I don't know what I call the magic matrix because it seems kind of magic to me. I'm not quite sure how we're going to do this, how to work it online. What should we do here, H&D?
No, it doesn't have to be us. The list of things that you guys have wanted to talk about is down the left-hand side of that matrix.
But I mean, are we going to display it for people to see, or are we just assuming that
and all of the materials are available, so if anybody is playing along, they can see it.
Okay, I'll show you. This is basically what it looks like. So this is the format going across and going down. And so go look for that if you're watching online. And the way it works is that on this side, if you're looking, oh no, now I have to do this backwards. These are the possible things we can do, and these are the different ways of looking at the issues. And so what we had down here are the possible issues, or the board as a teaching and learning laboratory, process for addressing legal obligations like minutes, annual meeting, bylaws, and budget. We have a whole bunch of those to deal with. Rotating roles among board members, process for consensus decision making, because we've really become aware that we need. At what point do we vote, or how do we assume that we all agreed on things, and how do we vote, and the process for creating the board's agenda. So,
and Alexandra, I just want to point out that I included the matrix in case people wanted to use it as a thinking tool, but if others have one that's particularly jumping out at them that you guys think, kind of like last time we said, we don't need to matrix this, we knew we needed to talk about values first. I wanted to provide this just as backup in case we needed it.
Okay.
But I wasn't suggesting that we necessarily have to. If somebody says, one of these is more important than everything else, then let's just go with it.
So does anybody have very strong feelings about any of these? That was a very rich discussion last month's meeting, the May meeting, and there's so much that came out of it. These are other things that we should be looking at some point. So do people have feelings about where we should go with this right now? I mean, what's the best possible thing that we could do today? Yeah, Gail.
I wanted to just check something before we decide that these 5 are the 5 that we're choosing from, and that is the introduction of the conversation or the topic about Tucson being a center for creating the future. I know that's not on the agenda formally, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to think about that a little bit today, or at the very least make sure it's on our July agenda.
Okay. Yeah, and I would like to say that while the the annual meeting and the process for addressing legal obligations is tedious. I would love to at least have a discussion about that so that we can get it out of the way, because I don't think that's going to be a big discussion, and I'd love to have it off the list.
Oh, I would disagree with you on its bigness, and I would agree with you on its importance.
Yep.
Okay.
Me too. Especially the budget piece.
Especially the budget piece.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually wasn't thinking about budget there, but I completely agree with that, and that incorporates the Tucson as a center for governance idea too.
The thing that I'm thinking with each of these, Alexandra, is that each of them has pretty much the same question behind it, which is what process does the board want to use for X? What involvement does the board want to have with X? What process do we as an organization have for X? So whether it's the bylaws, whether it's the budget, I think figuring out what is the system behind that. That's why I said I disagree that it's big. I think each of these is going to be a big discussion, and probably a really formative discussion for other things.
Can I say one more thing? I want to make the case for using the matrix, because I think that the criteria that are here are really good, and I would suggest that we also might want to add, as we see fit, to other criteria as well. But I think this is a really important format, and I mean, in the spirit of the first, the board being a teaching and learning laboratory, and Mark's favorite phrase of eating our own dog food, if we don't use this as our approach, then it's hard to teach other people that this is a valuable approach if we're not trying it. So I think there's a few things in that sentence, but I do see the opportunity for other criteria to be considered, and I love this framework. I've used it many times.
And this is something that Hildy teaches in the immersion courses, which is why I think Gail, you and I, Erin, have you taken the course? No, you've been around it.
Yep. Just finished it.
Oh, of course, that's right. So we've learned how to use this, which is really simple, and we'd be happy to show you how to use it. So, any other comments or thoughts about what the best way to move us forward is? And I agree with you, Hildy, that I think it is about figuring out what's the system behind it, which may be systems. I mean, I think it's systems we're creating for ourselves. And we certainly don't need to recreate the world, but it's about how we come at it.
Yeah. What does it mean for us?
Just a quick breakaway for a second. Jane Garson was tweeting two things that I wanted to pass on. One, that she was thanking you, Erin, for the wonderful words about Canada. Being Canadian, she would do that. And also that it's totally awesome that you, Dave, are here and participating, because she always loves your ideas and the way you express them. So
yeah, you are Jane's awesome.
That's very kind.
So
I'd be up for diving in. Doing what I'll say what Gail does.
That we should use the matrix. Anybody else have any strong feelings, pro or con the matrix?
I'm all for the matrix.
Same here. Absolutely.
Okay. The matrix wins.
Ready, set,
Matrix wins. That's
Okay.
Neo says yes.
episode 1, 2, or 3, which is the
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to go around and ask each of you. 1 is no, 2 is kind of in the middle, and 3 is yes. So for each of the issues, we have, right now we have 4 different criteria. I'll just read them off quickly. First is urgent and liability. Could it hurt the organization? Second is bringing us forward. Is this a critical part of moving forward with our strategic initiatives? Third is mission. Will this issue directly contribute to accomplishing our mission? And the fourth is facilitating others. Will this issue make someone else's life easier? A board member, staff, volunteers? And there are, other criteria. If anybody has any other criteria or any other issues they'd like to add, let me add your, Gail, the Tucson initiative, shall I call it? Tucson, we'll get to that. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 issues, and I think we can zip through this pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
I have a criteria to add.
Yeah.
And that is, will this, or to what degree would this engage board members themselves, and that is developing our skills and or our relationships.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And one being it won't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other criteria anyone wants to add? Hopefully you have this in front of you. But we'll read it off in any case. So let's start with the board as a teaching and learning laboratory. And just to review, just to go over again, what we're trying to do is determine, this is a decision-making tool, and it's a weighting tool, as Hildy says, which took me a while to figure out that she meant W-E-I-G-H-T. I first heard it as W-A-I-T, which...
Well, it actually does tell you which ones you can wait on and which ones you can...
That's true. That's sort of what I thought when I very first heard it in the immersion class. But we'll figure out what weight we want to give to everything and how long we want to wait to do it.
Alexandra, can I just change one thing? I just realized as I wrote the words engaging board members, it's actually, what I'm interested in is engaging or increasing board leadership. I think that's really what I was aiming at.
Can you define that?
Yep. I think that it's critically important that we find a way that we use whatever opportunities we can to develop the leadership capacity among members of this board so that we are ready or we need to be ready now, but we're not. And so at a certain point when, Hildy, you are doing other things and not engaging in every single aspect of what this board does, not that you're going to leave or anything, but that other people are ready and on the ground doing this.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's the succession column.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could be.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
Partially. I mean, I think it's also developing, I hope it's not just succession, but it's also developing leadership so that we're each other's brains.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay, ready to go?
Yep.
So what we'll do is I'm just going to read each issue and we will ask each of you for a number and there are, how many of us? 9 of us?
We don't have to, I don't know that we have to actually go around. We can shout out.
Shout out. Okay.
Because I think we'll
It's
probably...
going to take too long otherwise since it's not visually in front of us. Okay, so the board is a teaching and learning laboratory. Urgent liability. Could it hurt the organization?
No.
1 is no. 2 is maybe neutral. 3 is yes.
The one.
One.
Interesting. I'm a 3 on that.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Tell us
3.
what.
The 3 comes from execution. I'm interested to learn and know more about how that will actually be delivered and executed. But an open laboratory without certain structures to me seems like it potentially could devolve into something that doesn't necessarily lend itself to the development of what we're offering and the brand.
You mean using us as using the actual board as an open laboratory?
Yeah, isn't that what that refers to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just check one thing? Our criteria, is the weighting actually backwards? Wouldn't 1 be yes and 3 be no? Maybe it's just the way I'm thinking about it.
No, what I weighted them on was the highest being the one that would say we have to talk about it. So if it's going to hurt us, then we should talk about it.
Then we need to talk about it, right?
Right. I thought it was in terms of favorability. I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Ready.
No, it made my brain go yeah too. Yeah.
So
Okay.
am I hearing mostly 1s, but then Mark's 3?
Do we want to make it a 2?
Personally, I think that we've already been living it for so many months, and I'm not sure that we have encountered any major pitfalls, but that makes me think of it as a 2 then.
Let's make it a 2. The one thing that I will, I'm going to put my teacher hat on for just a second. The one
Please do.
The one thing that I've learned using this process for going on 15 years is that go where the emotion of the group is, because it all comes out in the wash.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not worth nitpicking over a number.
Right.
So if it looks like between the 1s and the 3s we've got a 2, then you go with it and you move on. And fast through it makes people come with their gut, and it never fails. I've never ever had it fail.
Well, and also, Mark, you felt pretty strongly about this. So,
Yeah.
I think that's important. That if anyone has a strong position on any of these issues, that needs to be weighted differently.
Yeah, I would frame it as I wouldn't say strong, but just questions and some concerns. I don't see the ship going down at all. I'm not even close to that. But I'm just also thinking at scale too. So I just think it's a conversation worth having and gaining some more clarity around what does that actually mean. Is it limited to our board meetings, or does it extend out and beyond the board meetings?
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question. Should we keep going with this and see if we can flesh that out more?
Yep. Just across.
Okay, the board is a teaching and learning laboratory. Is this bringing us forward? Is this a critical part of moving forward with our strategic initiatives? 1 being it's not, and 2 being maybe or neutral, 3 being yes.
That's it. 3.
3.
You got everybody's holding their fingers up.
Okay, great.
Definitely
we got 3. Mission. Will the board as a teaching and learning laboratory directly contribute to accomplishing our mission? 1 is
3.
3. Okay. Facilitating others. Will the board as a teaching and learning laboratory make someone else's life easier? Board member, staff, volunteers.
I don't
3. Yes.
You think?
I think so.
1 is no, it will not. 2 is maybe. 3 is yes, it will.
Maybe it's looking at what that criteria means.
Well, I think of it.
Is it holding somebody back? So, for instance, if
So maybe we should phrase it the other way around.
yeah,
I don't know.
Is this stopping? Is this making it hard for? If we don't talk about it, is it making it hard for somebody? So that's sort of what I was saying. Is this a barrier to moving forward on something?
Okay. That's good. Is it a barrier to moving forward? Okay, so let's try it that way.
But I think there's also value in leaving this, because it helps us to expand our thinking way away from traditional organizational benefits to whose life does this make easier. And I think that list is too short. I think graduates and casual observers and all sorts of other people. When we talk about doing what we do openly, it's way beyond the usual suspects.
Okay, so if we talk about it, so those are 2 completely different things. So in the other criteria category, is this a barrier to moving forward?
Okay, so we're taking it as 2 separate things, and is it a barrier moving forward, and whose life does this make easier?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do those separately then.
Okay.
Is it a barrier? So facilitating others, is this a barrier to moving forward? 1 is no, 2 is maybe, or neutral, 3 is yes.
I don't think it's stopping anybody from doing anything.
So that would be 1. It's not a barrier. Is everyone agreed on that? Okay. Let me just make a note that there's 2 parts to this. Okay, and the other part of this is whose life, facilitating others, whose life does this make? Well, no, that's asking a direct question.
If we talk about this, will it make others' lives easier?
Yeah, okay. Will it make others' lives easier? The board is a teaching and learning laboratory.
And does it allow us to walk our talk? Are we actually modeling what we say, what we teach? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this definitely helps others If we talk about what it means to be a learning lab, then that definitely will help others who are thinking about being a learning lab.
Yeah, I actually feel very strongly that it is, that modeling makes lives easier. Any other?
Oh, and just think about it. In a traditional community benefit organization, how often do the staff get to watch the board do what they do? Zero.
Yeah.
How often do volunteers who are not board members see the board in action? Never. So I think there's real value. I'm so glad we're talking about this.
Yep.
Dave, I'd be curious if you have any thoughts in this area.
With regard to what specifically?
Having a board be a demonstration of behavior for
specifically to the matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea overall. My experience with the community-based organizations I work with is that it's not quite as unusual for the staff and volunteers to have access to the board as I've heard you talking about. Mm-hmm. That doesn't negate the observations that were just shared, I don't think. And unfortunately, of course, one of the things that happens is that when things get tougher, you sometimes see people pull away from that degree of openness and transparency, which is a warning, an implicit warning in and of itself for some folks who are savvy about it. I think it's a useful idea. The one thing that I think is implicit in the matrix, but I was kind of watching it to see how it plays out, is that boards at any point in time are usually balancing 2 or 3 competing imperatives, and so you may well be intuitively but maybe unclearly balancing 1 or 2 of those, and the one that of course gets to weigh in the most in a way that could be an issue is legal accountability and your legal obligations. And one of the things that we see often interferes with innovation in governance systems is in an effort to stay clean legally, people shy away from doing things that may expose them to opportunities for innovation, but for legitimate reasons.
Yeah.
You know what that's bringing up for me is why that is even then more important, that if we talk about this issue of what it means to be a board that is a teaching and learning lab, will it help others? Is that others do tend to get so mired in the legal, and they use that as a reason for not talking about these things. So for me, in that 4th column, will talking about this issue make life easier, make that conversation easier for others, becomes even more important given what you just said, Dave.
Mm-hmm. Right. And maybe easier isn't. Maybe easier isn't the right word. I'm not sure.
Well, and I think I used the word easier because I was thinking of it in terms of barrier. So
right.
It would make life easier, but talking about facilitating a conversation for others, having others engage in this in these deliberations.
Mm-hmm.
And my observation to what you just said would be, if you equate easier with easier to have a productive, true dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually good. Easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great.
And maybe even as simple as really understanding what boards do, which I think is a huge mystery for much of the world, including a lot of boards. And I'm not being funny.
Including most boards. And then Alexandra, don't forget that Gail had added another criteria.
And that the one Gail added, and correct me if I don't get this right, Gail, is to what degree will this engage the board's leadership or develop opportunities for leadership capacity? Is that kind of right? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And let me see. So, to what degree? How about will this engage board leadership? Mm-hmm. Since we have numbers, is that okay with you, Gail?
Mm-hmm.
And develop opportunities for leadership capacity. So 1 would be no, 2 maybe, and 3 yes. I would say a resounding 3 personally, but any other numbers, thoughts?
Okay, so I have to share with you guys an observation that's making me smile right now. The last item that was on here before Gail added, talking about Tucson as a center for creating the future, was the process for creating the board's agenda. And we're spending this meeting figuring out the process. Right. I mean, it's great. So in terms of the answer to
we've already done that.
what we talk about during this meeting, what we're really doing is figuring out the process. So I'm just smiling at that.
Yep.
Okay, so we mostly had, well, we'll go back over that, but
Yep.
So the next issue is the process for addressing legal obligations, and that includes minutes, annual meeting, bylaws, budget, probably, well, no, election of officers might come under the rotating roles among board members, but, right? So, how urgent is it?
It's a 3 in that first column, absolutely. If we had a 7, it's a...
I'm totally there, too. I feel like we really need to get into this, and I think it should be sort of juicy, too.
Yep.
A 3 meaning yes, it's urgent, and from a liability point of, urgent liability, can it hurt the organization? Cannot addressing it hurt the organization is what we're asking.
Yes.
1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes. Everybody agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. Bringing us forward is addressing legal obligations a critical part of moving forward with our strategic initiatives.
I'm sort of seeing it too.
Yeah.
Nodding his head.
It's really not that much about strategic initiatives.
You guys
Mission.
okay with it too?
Oh yeah. Until we get our fiduciary house in order, though, all of the strategy is not as fulsome. It can't be as fulsome.
Right. I
'Cause we
like
gotta
our fiduciary
get that
house in
done.
order. Mission. Well, this will the process for addressing legal obligations directly contribute to accomplishing our mission.
Yes.
1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes.
You know, I think I would have said a 1 or a 2 until Dave brought up the whole point that it's the thing that stops other conversations. And so I'm very glad you're here, Mr. Lenz, because I would definitely say that it's a 3.
It's a 3 because it'll allow us, accomplishing it will allow us to move forward. Is that what you're?
No, it's a 3 because our mission is that others know how to create the future.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And if by our modeling what it is to actually create bylaws, a process for doing budget, a process for addressing the legal issues as means to an ends rather than the ends themselves, then that is our mission.
Right. Yeah, which brings us right to the next one with facilitating others, which we've sort of reworded to, will it make life more easier to have productive dialogue? 1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes. Will it make life easier, other people's lives easier, board members, staff, volunteers, graduates of the, yes?
Definitely
Okay.
a 3 for me.
3. Okay, I'm putting down 3 for that one. And to what degree will determining a process for addressing legal obligations, to what degree will that engage board leadership?
That's the succession item. Yeah.
I think it's really important. Anybody not think so?
I do too, and I'm wondering whether or not this could be the subject of an action team or an ad hoc committee or a something that gets us started in between board meetings.
That always concerns me.
Yeah?
That always concerns me. It always gets relegated and boards don't own it. I don't know what your
What would it take for us to create ownership in it and get some pieces of this going?
Let's work this all the way through, but my
You know, one of the things though about that, and I share your concern, but I was just thinking, if these meetings by this subcommittee are live and recorded, so that it's not a secret meeting in essence.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it's a secret meeting. I'm suggesting that there is, if we decide through this thing that there's no more important thing we can talk about than X, then the last thing you do is relegate that to a committee. You say there's no more important thing we can talk about.
But I don't, and sorry to be difficult, but I don't necessarily see it as, wouldn't use the word relegate. I think we need to change the language and stop thinking about it as a taking away from, but as an adding to.
Can I ask you why you think a committee would be useful or helpful, Gail?
Because there's 1, 2, 3 things, and I'm not necessarily referring to budget when I'm talking about this. I'm thinking about minutes and planning an annual meeting and bylaws, because it'll be a year from now before we get to that with all the other things that we do, and I'm kind of aware that if we can plan faculty and other pieces of our work in special convened contexts, perhaps we can do the same here to generate ideas and thinking that the board members that could consider.
Let's work all of this through and then figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got all of...
Except for the last one. Is this a barrier to moving forward? Yes, it absolutely is.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these discussions are a barrier to moving forward. It's a barrier for Drew in terms of our not having a set way of how we want to see the minutes taken. It's a there's certainly the budget is, so some of those are absolutely, I'm feeling operationally
are very really getting in your way. Yeah. So that has pretty strong feelings all the way across. Okay, rotating roles among board members, which is actually what we're doing right now, because Gail chaired the last meeting. I'm chairing this one, and I don't think we've even discussed that much. But
and what we had talked about was that there are other roles that could rotate
and that probably should be rotated too. So let's see if we can do this really fast. So number one, its urgency or liability. Could it hurt the organization if, well, I don't know, is it if we do it or if we don't do it?
If we don't do it.
If we don't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes.
No.
I would go with a 1.
No.
Yeah, I agree.
Aaron's got a 1.
Bringing us forward. Is having rotating roles a critical part of moving forward with our strategic initiatives? 1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes.
I might give it a 2, and the reason I'm thinking that is that it is serving as an example for other boards, where you don't have the institutional,
this is how you should do it.
Right. That there, and I also think that it allows different styles and different approaches to become part of the culture of an organization.
And I actually would.
And I would say that's to mission, but it's not to our strategic initiatives are finding partners, visibility, and stabilizing. So in terms of those,
mission,
it's mission. In that third column, I would say a 2, but I think in this, it's really. I don't think it's a critical part of moving forward on those 3 things.
On these strategic initiatives themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, mission. Will having rotating roles directly contribute to accomplishing our mission?
I think it's a 2.
I would say a 2 also. Anybody? Is everyone agreed? It's a 2? Okay. Facilitating others, which we've now changed to, will it make life more easier and offer productive and true dialogue to have rotating roles among board members?
Who are you talking about?
Yeah, I probably not really.
There's some groups that get into a thing where they have a cow if you sit in their seat.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at some boards and they sit in the same chairs every meeting.
Yeah.
Even if they only meet 4 times a year. And if you sat in one of their chairs, they just, it sends them off in the world. I mean, it's not like you go out in the parking lot and have fisticuffs, but, it just burns people subconsciously for the whole meeting.
Well, and I'm looking at the language that Dave had talked about in terms of will it make it easier to have productive, true dialogue for others to have if we have that conversation about you're sitting in my chair.
Well, I mean, the chair thing is just a euphemism for every other role you might have. So,
right.
If we start taking ownership of roles, then we can just go find a bunch of kindergartners to run the board.
Yeah, no, so would you guys say 2 or 3?
2.
A 2.
Another way of thinking about it is, does it help other people to open up options in front of them that they have been unwilling to look at up until now?
Who are the other people that you're thinking about, Gail?
Other boards that
Oh,
are
other boards. Okay.
partners and colleagues.
I like that.
Or somebody who's just not in that role. They don't even think they're capable of taking on that role.
Yeah.
Right.
We may find out that they're Wonder Woman in that role.
Well, and one of the other things that I think that it will bring up that will that makes it important in this column, and I'm almost thinking that it may be a 3 rather than a 2, is that we'll actually be talking about what the roles are. And so one of the roles, for instance, that I see is really important, and it helps explain, Dave, why we start every meeting by taking a half an hour or 20 minutes to talk about what's going on in our personal lives, is somebody taking the role of engaging board members between meetings. And engaging board members with each other. Well, that's talking about a role that we will be, when we have that discussion, we'll be talking about that publicly in terms of what are the roles that we think would be beneficial on the board. I think that answers your whole thing that you just mentioned, Gail. Does it help others open up options they might not otherwise think about? Does it help to have the productive dialogue about that? I think just naming those roles, along the lines of what you were saying, Mark, I think, and then saying, oh yeah, that's a place where I could actually do something.
Well, I also think the idea of rotation is an unusual and interesting one, because typically the chair, in almost every board I've ever been involved with, the chair does the major part of the work and other people do other things, and the idea of rotating is a really interesting one. I would also say that as somebody is chairing this week, I mean, I think I must have chaired hundreds of boards of different types, and I was really nervous about doing this one because first of all, I was Hildy's student, and that's something we've really discussed, is how to move from beyond being Hildy's student to, I mean, I do feel like I'm Hildy's peer, but I learned so much of what I know from Hildy, and we don't want a board of followers. We want a board of peers. We want people who are able to disagree or to take your ideas further or whatever.
Well, if we have a board of followers, then we're totally screwed if I leave, because then you'll all just follow me.
Right.
That's true. We could throw ourselves in the funeral pyre, right?
All end up in Vancouver with the goats.
Yeah.
Guys, you know what? I'd like to point out that we've been talking for an hour and 15 minutes and nobody has mentioned bacon yet.
I've been sitting on my tongue.
Can I switch it to tempeh? I know it doesn't,
Everybody can switch it to whatever you like.
It's got to be bacon.
I had some soy bacon last week, and I thought of you guys, so there you go.
Soy bacon sucks. As a vegetarian, I will tell you.
I know, but I'm saying tempeh. Let's do it. Nobody's jumping at that.
No, it's not. So I'm almost seeing the will it allow others to have conversation. I'm almost seeing that as a 3 in that column. After we've discussed it here.
And then the other, well, I don't know where, is this before or after? To what degree will it engage board leadership?
Is there a 7?
Yeah. I mean, that just seems so critical to me.
Yep.
Yeah. So 3 to the 3rd degree. And then there is another, well, or another way of putting that was to use opportunities to develop leadership capacity. Yeah. And then the final one that got added is the one about barriers. Is this a barrier? Will not doing this be a barrier to moving forward? And 1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes. So it's sort of a backward sentence, but so I would say.
I'm vacillating, and the only reason I'm vacillating is because the only one that it's going to stop is me, because I'm currently holding most of those roles.
Right.
And what it's doing is it's stopping me from doing other things.
Well, but at this point, the role that you're playing as the boundary pusher or whatever, it is affecting moving forward. So
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
it's addressing moving forward capacity.
Yeah, that's why I'm sort of vacillating. It's not a barrier to the board moving forward, but you know, maybe a 2. I mean, I
actually kind of think it is a barrier to the board moving forward. I think it's a terrific learning process, and you engage differently when you rotate roles. And we're not just talking about chairing; we're talking about roles we haven't even thought up yet, right?
Okay.
So a 2 to 3, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Any other?
2.786.
All right. So the next issue is the process for consensus decision making, and that's about how we vote, when we vote, if we vote, or how we just come to an agreement and are aware that an agreement has been reached.
Today we've been using this method.
Right, exactly. Peace, brother. Right. So how urgent is that? Could it hurt the organization, I guess, to not have a process, right? Or is it process for is it having which way is that question asked?
If we don't have it, will it hurt us?
Okay, so if we don't have it.
Don't talk about this. If we don't talk about it, will it hurt us?
Yeah.
Talk about
the
method
for coming to decision making, a decision in consensus. I don't know that it's certainly not going to hurt us as much as, you know, compared to if we don't have a process for bylaws, if we don't have a process for budget.
But we also have an issue of clarity and assumption here, and that if we
is it a 2?
If we don't talk about it, then I may assume that we're in agreement on something, or it seems an agreement, or maybe I'm wrong. So on some of these issues, I do think maybe we need to determine what issues that this is relevant to, or what topics it's relevant to. Yeah. But I do think that having even the visual record of holding your fingers up is some way of
right.
Moving past just what I assume.
Well, it is a process.
It's an order of operations.
Sorry, what did you say?
Just to agree on an order of operations going forward, I think would be probably helpful.
So that would be a 2 or a 3, or how serious? How important is this?
I'm comparing it up to the bylaws and budget, and I'm just seeing it as a 2. I just don't see it as
okay.
Hurt us as bad as those things could.
Everyone else in agreement?
Well, especially given that this exercise is about deciding what order. It's not like we're never going to talk about it. It's just what order we discuss these in.
Yeah.
Okay, bringing us forward. Is this a critical part? Is having a process for creating consensus a critical part of moving forward with our strategic initiatives?
I think our strategic initiatives are already set. You know, what we're going to do for this year is what we're going to do. So I think that's a 1.
Everyone agree? It's not.
And I also am looking at the strategic initiatives now that I'm looking at the board as a teaching and learning lab. I think it's a 1 there too. What we were confusing it with was mission, but the board as a teaching and learning lab is not going to affect our you know, talking about that is not going to affect our current strategic initiatives.
Oh, so you're going back to the.
I just went back to the first item because it suddenly I looked in my matrix and I went, oh, there's a 3 there. Will our talking about what it means to be a teaching and learning lab affect our ability to get partners and fund, our ability to get visibility, our current our stabilization?
Right. If you really focus it on specifically strategic
on those
initiatives,
3
right?
initiatives. Yeah.
Which.
So.
Okay, everybody agree with that? I think that is right, actually. Now that we're coming around to that, coming back and looking at that. Okay, so mission. Will the process for consensus decision making directly contribute to accomplishing our mission?
I think so.
I would say 3 myself.
3. I'm seeing a lot of 3s here. Okay. So yes. Facilitating others. Will it make life easier to have a productive dialogue for other people, board members, staff, volunteers, whoever? To have,
Yes.
Agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Okay, to what degree will this engage board leadership and develop more opportunities for leadership capacity if we have a real process for consensus decision making? Or, no,
Yes.
that's asking it the wrong way again. Does it make?
Are we demonstrating ways for others, for new options for others? Would be
Good.
another way of asking it. And yes.
Yeah. No, I thought we were on the board leadership one.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, that was, I think we came up with 3 of that.
Yep.
So is that okay? We're ready to move on from board leadership?
Yep.
Oh, no, to board leadership, sorry.
Two board.
We,
You would say
What?
2? I would say 3 myself.
She said moving to board leadership.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
give that a 3.
Exactly.
right.
Okay. Sorry.
And then the final one is, does it create barriers? Does the process, if we create a process for consensus decision making, will that create barriers?
No, if we don't do it.
If we don't do it, yeah, I'm getting in trouble with this double negative here.
Will it be a barrier?
Not doing it.
Yeah. You got to phrase them in the positive. Yeah, no, it won't
I don't
create
think,
a.
yeah, I think we'll be fine. Not fine, but
Do you agree with that? It's not a critical. It's not as critical.
it's not stopping anybody from doing anything.
Right.
Question for Dave on consensus. Consensus making is the right word. The consensus in board decision making process. Have you any thoughts? Have you encountered it? Do you see anything we're missing here?
I don't see anything you're missing. I think you're still sort of exploring what each other means and which things fit into which category. Ultimately, not everything is worth consensual decision making, and I have wondered about that a little bit as certain things have come up in the conversation. But you've got to have the ground rules and consensus on that to get going, and then you've got the legitimacy to proceed from there. Consensus decision making isn't always the most efficient, and so the one thing I've wondered about occasionally as I've listened to your conversation is whether everything is equally worth the cost of time and energy to engage in consensus, or else be completely off the agenda at all. And I'm too new to the conversation, and in fact, to be candid, I'm still processing what you're doing. It's as I've come through this process of reading your material and seeing your videos in preparation for the meeting and all that, I've gotten a better sense of where you are in the evolution of the organization's life. Because frankly, in the early stage of saying, yeah, I'll come join the board meeting, it wasn't clear to me that you're still at a pretty formative stage.
Yeah.
And some of this made no sense to me until I realized that you were at the formative stage. One of the things that will be interesting to look at over time is how this will evolve, and frankly, I presume you'll be intentional about making sure it does evolve as the organization's progression through life stages it continues or moves forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things about being a demonstration is that we are demonstrating how we figure out every step of it, as opposed to just presuming that we should do it the ways that it always is done, which may be fine, but we're looking at every step of the way to question, is this the best? Should we be doing it this way? Is this the best way?
And the whole issue of consensus had come up with, there are times when we vote, and there are times where we'll have an hour and a half discussion about something, and we believe we have come to agreement, but we have no way of signaling that we've come to agreement.
Right.
And so when this very specific thing was about how, and it was a word that Gail, you had used, is when we are having a discussion that does not require a vote, but we all seem to be in agreement. 2 or 3 months ago, I finally, at the end of a discussion, said, okay, what do you guys think we just agreed to? So that is very, very specifically, it's a process for when we have a decision that doesn't require a vote. How do we know what we agreed to?
And Gail, I think the word you used was signaling.
Was signaling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I love that. I love.
Well, and it fits with our values in so many different ways. It creates an opportunity for us to build something beyond win-lose.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're now at the process for creating the board's agenda, which, as Hildy pointed out, we have just used a particular process, but I don't know that we want to assume that this is the process we would always use, right?
Right.
And I don't know if this is even how effective this is as a process when we have people watching who may or may not have this in front of them.
And the other thing that it brings up, Alexandra, is in terms of a process. This might be the process, but it might not require the entire board. Or
Right.
This might be the process, and we do it via listserv before the meeting, or, so in terms of, or this may not be the process at all. But, who creates the agenda? How does it get created? That's really what...
So I think that is the question
you have a
then...
puppy. Wait, everything has to stop. You have is that a new puppy?
Oh,
Who's got a puppy?
Mark,
Mark has a puppy.
No, it's the same old dog. It's just been shaved.
let's see her. Let's see her. Hold her up again.
Mark, there you go.
Oh, hello.
Okay.
She says it's time for a bio break.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we can. I should not presume. I'm not the chair. Sorry.
No, go right ahead. Would everybody like to take a break for a few minutes?
Yeah.
I actually need to say farewell for now. I have an 11:30 meeting that I need to jump over to.
Clearly in a different time zone from me, right?
Yeah.
So how about I have 2:30, which is 11:30 for Mark's time.
Mm-hmm.
How about we'll be back in 5 minutes?
Sounds good. Mark, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark, before you leave, reflections, observations, anything that stood out for you in today's meeting?
Dave's last round of comments really stood out. I think he really accurately spoke to where the organization is, it just inspires me to just keep kind of digging in and kind of help eliminate what I think I heard him describing in terms of a little bit of a gap between presentation and direct experience, and so that all comes together, aligned and in a very coherent way.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll see you in 5 minutes. Thank you so much, Mark, and we'll see everybody else. And the clock is ticking.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.
And I keep feeling like I have to jump into the picture. Can we pull it down just a little bit? Could you do that while I sit here and we can tell you? That's better. Thanks. Hi, Gail.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing really, really well. I'm very, very much enjoying this conversation. This
Absolutely.
is perhaps the most nuts and bolts we've ever been as a board.
It's true.
It really is.
Absolutely. I'm loving it, and it's causing my head to go because I'm thinking about it as a consultant mostly. I'm thinking about, well, what would I want to share with other people based on what we're doing, and what questions does this make possible for them to be considering? So I'm really liking it.
Yeah, yeah. It's the the possibilities in the mundane.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it's the reason that our mission is about making day-to-day practice more infused with what actually creates the future.
Yeah.
Because we squander, we unintentionally squander all of these amazing opportunities to be more intentional.
Yeah, to be I'm just making notes to myself, to be reflective as a normal practice, as opposed to just give me the rote thing and let's get it over with.
Yeah. You know, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. What do you want to talk about? And we talk about one of them, and the other ones get bumped, and we don't know why. And until something's on fire.
Yeah. And we then are frustrated because we don't feel like our time is being well used as board members.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just.
And there's Alexandra. Listen, I'm so happy for you guys that you're having a conversation next week with Phil Kubeta. That is going to be amazing.
The upcoming conversations about exactly actually what Mark Eckhart was talking about that Kathleen is going to bring to Common is that conversation about what money means and how.
Yeah, that really sounded fascinating.
How we go about, well, and what's fun is that Kathleen and I have been trying to get together for about a month now, and I've been keeping fingers crossed that she will be part of one of the conversations that that you're going to be part of with Phil this week, Alexandra, and that Sydney and Deborah Jacobs and Kathleen Enright are going to be part of next week. And yeah, I mean, my job over the next several weeks is to arrange. You know, I think you saw in the video, 20 to 30 of these.
Yep. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. But these aren't live hangouts, are they?
They absolutely are.
They are.
Oh God. Okay, I gotta schedule the one then with Phil. Just because I'm so enamored with his blog, I just got to know who this guy is.
Oh well, you see, and the thought to me of having
not to mention you guys. I'm enamored with you.
Alexandra and Phil together in a room.
Ooh.
You can see the emails that are going back and forth just between the two of them, and I'm like this fly on the wall before this conversation's even started, and I'm kicking myself that I haven't introduced you guys earlier because, yeah.
By the way, while we're in sort of transition here, I wanted to pass on that I had an email conversation with Carl that he absolutely could not connect, and he gave his apologies to everyone. But he did try, and whatever the tech issues he was
missing.
having.
Yeah.
No bacon for Carl.
No bacon for Carl. Can't have your breakfast.
Yeah, I've heard that.
No pudding.
Yeah. Eat your beans. And then there was a comment from
Where'd you go?
right,
From Jane.
From Jane.
Business ethics events last week discussed how legal advice for the CEO not to speak up in crisis increases risk, negative impact. Yep.
Wait, so that was something called, there was a blog or a meeting or something?
Jane was talking about there was a business ethics, I guess there was a business ethics event someplace last week she was at, that was discussing how the legal advice that a CEO should just shut up when they're in crisis actually increases the negative effects, as if we wouldn't against that.
Wow, I thought that had been long established, actually. That's an interesting idea that that it is.
That came from drobvious.com.
Yeah.
Now, is that Doc Ock? I mean, Doc Ov?
Oh, God. All right. Well, we've got 2 more, yeah? 2 more to do? Because Gail added one.
Yeah, so I guess, should we just go ahead then, move on, since we are now at we have passed the 5-minute mark?
Yep.
Okay, so we were talking about the process for creating the board's agenda, and I think this is about the process for it. Have we figured out a process and how?
How does something get onto the agenda? I mean,
right.
To date, it has been 2 things, but then all of these things arose, and that's why this became really important.
Mm-hmm.
To date, it has either been a continuation of, okay, well, the conversation this month said X, so next month it makes sense. It's a segue from the last conversation. Or something has come up, like when we talked several meetings ago about how do we prioritize, how should Dimitri and I prioritize where we're spending our time. So it's either been something that's come up operationally, but for the most part, it's been a logical sequence off of what we talked about the last time, except that all of these things then all came up, and we don't have any process for who creates the agenda, how does it get created, etc.
Right. So we continue to need to work on what is the process, and that can include discussing how well this worked today, but that's later. Right now we're talking about just the creation of a process, and how urgent is that? Could it hurt the organization to having a process?
If we don't,
can it hurt the organization? So 1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes.
I'm sort of feeling it's a 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if something's on fire, we're going to talk about it.
I completely agree. I feel like it really, and we really need to have it that discussion as a group too, and have it not be on your shoulders. Is everyone in agreement?
Yes.
Bringing us forward is having a process for creating an agenda a critical part of moving forward with our strategic initiatives?
Yeah, they're moving forward. That one's not going to hurt it. And if there's something, again, our strategic initiative, the 3 of them being, again, finding partners, increasing our visibility, and stabilizing what we currently have. When the issue came up that was specifically about stabilizing, which had to do with prioritizing program development, we immediately said, okay, that has to be on the agenda.
Right.
So yeah, so I don't think it's an issue. I think that's a 1.
Everyone in agreement?
Yes. Can I just say something about the urgency liability thing? And that is, it's connected to the notion that we're in a startup, sort of formation mode. And it reminds me of when we needed to have, I guess I think that the liability and urgency is related to when there are topics that we really should be talking about that perhaps we are thinking over and mulling. And I'm thinking about the time when, Mark, you and Alexandra met and had that conversation about everyone's great discomfort over the salary issue, the non-salary issue, and that wasn't an agenda item. It wasn't anywhere close to being on our agenda, but it was sort of that side conversation that pushed it to, oh my gosh, this really is big, and we really need to talk about this. So I'm not sure that it's actually a 1. I think it might be a 2, because sometimes things don't get noted, or they get noted once and then we move on and we don't do anything about them, but they need to come back.
I wrote 2.
Okay. So we've shifted that to a 2.
I also want to just thank you guys, because Drew's not here. I'm going to be doing the minutes, and this is the easiest minute.
You got off easy, Hildy.
Yeah. And we're missing Drew.
We are missing Drew. He graduated. Damn it, he should be here.
He's supposed to be free as a bird. That's what he told us the other day.
He graduated, and he bought a house, and he moved.
And that's what you think before you graduate.
He'll be free until he passes the bar. Then he won't be free anymore.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but
while he's studying for the bar. Okay, mission. So will having a process for creating the board's agenda directly contribute to accomplishing our mission? I kind of think it's a pretty big part of the process itself is necessary in order for us to move forward. So I'd say a 3, but I'm open to. Yeah, any other?
At least a 2.
Yeah, I was going 2.
2 to 3. Okay. 2.5.
2.5.
Okay. Facilitating others. Will it make life easier to have more productive dialogue for other people?
Yeah, I think it.
Will it allow a more?
Yep, it will.
1 is no, 2 is maybe, 3 is yes.
It'll definitely model process for people, because that is one of the most, in my experience, and Dave, I'd love you to speak to that. In my experience, how a bill becomes a law, how an item gets on the agenda, is some deep dark mystery in organizations. Do you experience that as well, Dave?
Yeah, I certainly would agree, and in fact, I mean, it reminds me of the old cliche that I'll be glad to let you make the decisions if you let me make the decision rules.
He doesn't look like Solomon.
So it's and frankly, I mean, I was struck when this part of the conversation came up at the frequency with which I hear the complaint that we have just spent from board members who leave a meeting saying, I've just spent 2 or 3 hours at a board meeting and we never once touched on anything that actually had an impact on the mission, and how demotivating that is for continued engagement or participation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
So pretty good board members if they already recognize that. That's already a start, I think. But
it's also why they left the board in a couple of cases.
Right. I was going to say that. That's their parting words.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I had a conversation. One of the things that I'm doing, and I won't name names unless that person wants me to name their name, but I've been having individual conversations with individual board members, and if I haven't spoken to you yet, you're on the list. And we've just been touching base about, how's things going and et cetera. And this person said, half the time I'm thinking, I'm not really sure what I'm doing here, and half the time I'm thinking, I can't imagine any other board that I would have this conversation. So sometimes I'm feeling like I'm not sure that I fit, and sometimes I'm feeling, wow, I'm so engaged. And I said, well, how does that compare to other boards that you're on? And this person said, oh, I never feel engaged on the other boards. So it's 100% of the time. No. Sorry.
Okay. So let's see. To what degree will this engage board leadership and develop more or will this engage board leadership and develop more opportunities for leadership capacity?
I think the board will own its agenda. Yeah.
It's a 3. For me.
It's totally a 3. Anyone have any other ideas other than a 3? Okay, it's a 3. Sold. The process for creating the board's agenda.
If we don't do it,
will not having a process create a barrier?
I'm going to say that it's at least a 2. And the reason is, when all of these issues came up 2 months ago, I was pulling my hair out that I was trying to put together an agenda and I couldn't find anybody to say what the hell should be on the agenda.
Right.
I was trying to physically create a document and nobody would tell me what the hell to put in it. So,
there's always bacon.
And that's what we wound up talking about. You see, you don't have an agenda.
Right.
That's what we wound up talking about.
And that's actually incredibly important, that there be a way for you or anybody else to have a dialogue about it. That's,
so I'm going to go with at least a 2 on the barrier thing.
Mm-hmm. 2? Is that a grade, everybody?
Yeah.
And then the final thing that Gail added was the Tucson initiative, or the idea that Hildy wrote about in her report of using the office in Tucson as a conference center and a meeting center for the immersion courses for maybe even other people to possibly to use in the community, but certainly to start with rejiggering the space, which actually I've been to this space a number of times, and for me as a New Yorker, it looked vast. I mean, I would think of a huge corporation working there, but so it did cross my mind too. But then I thought, what do I know? Is we all live in tiny spaces in New York.
We found a closet that we're moving our office into, so you'll go right at home there.
So it seemed like a really interesting possibility. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I comment? I'm not sure that this item actually belongs here anymore, because at the beginning of the meeting, I thought we were sort of creating the agenda for this meeting, and I didn't want to have that opportunity lost. But at 10 minutes to 3, I'm not sure that we need to worry, because I know it's going to fit into a future agenda now.
And I actually kind of agree with you, because I think it's not about creating a process or thinking in the broader sense. It's about taking action. That what do you feel, Dimitri and Hildy?
Let me share with you yes and because it's more than the office. It is really, will we be thinking about Tucson as a place for demonstration of what a mission support organization could be if it was focused entirely on mission. And so yes, we'll be, sort of rejiggering the office. And very excited about it, actually. We're already starting to empty everything out of here and paint. And Erin, you should come down and paint.
More fun than Victoria, right?
Come on down. We'll put goats outside and you'll be fine. But the physical space of the office is less an issue than what we're going to be talking about when we really do talk about this, which is really going to be what is the change of mindset when we're no longer thinking of ourselves solely as, or if we're no longer thinking of ourselves solely as a global organization that works with place-based organizations. What would change if we were to consider that this is and could be a place-based organization? What services would we do, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a way bigger question than just painting and moving offices and using the space. It's not for today, but I just wanted to share with you that there's two things going on simultaneously in our brains.
And that would be, Alexander, where other people using the space, where that sort of evolved, was that looking at it more in the context of, if we're a place-based organization in this community, then that begins to make sense beyond just we're subleasing, hourly, whatever the.
One of the things I want to share in terms of Nancy and Jane are online, and Jane talked about the fact that many small organizations could improve risk oversight with similar discussions to the agenda setting one. And I think you're absolutely right, Jane. I think you're absolutely right. I think that whole issue of how will it impact other organizations? And then on the consensus thing, Nancy was talking about the fact that as you check for agreement on the matrix items, it feels like you're already developing a consensus process.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's so valuable.
Yeah.
Can I just say then that I think that the Tucson Creating the Future Center is a program conversation.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Not a nuts and bolts conversation. So why don't we just leave it? We're going to do it anyway.
I agree.
2, 3.
And are there any other things anybody would like to add? Any other issues that have come up or that we feel like we should be talking about as part of this?
1, 2, 3, 10, 13.
Okay, so do you mind? So you can get a visual look, and it's a mess.
I like it.
2, 3, 9.
And this is the old-fashioned way of sending you the information, holding it up in front of you. But it looks to me like basically.
What did you come up with? Because I came up with. Did you guys add them up?
No.
Okay.
The total is 42.
The total's always 42. If you don't know by now that we are the answer to life, the universe, and everything. We just don't know the question. And we also insist that a powerful question is more important than the answer. I got, when I added them up, I got for, what does it mean for the board to be a teaching and learning lab? I got 13. Did you guys get that? I got 17 for addressing our legal issues. I got 13. I got 13 for rotating roles, 13 for consensus, and 14 for the process for agenda. Did you guys get that?
I got 13 for process, but I think that's something shifted there.
For the agenda?
From this
1, 2.
Oh, no, you're right. Sorry. That was...
Say the
I
total
put it wrong.
again.
I got 13, 17, 13, 13, 14.
Yep, that's pretty much what I got too. There are a couple of that are halves, but that's... And it to me, it's just visually very clear that, this line here is the one with the strongest.
Well, it's the only one that's got no ones in it.
Yeah.
And just as you know, teachable moment. So I'll be teacher for just a second. It's why I said it really doesn't matter if you guys like a 2 better than a 1. Fine, we'll go for it, because I have never seen this not come out clear. Where the thing that is important comes out, and
Pops right up.
It just pops, and the thing that's going to sink to the bottom is going to sink to the bottom, whether you call it a 2 or a 1 on this particular item. And
Right.
so I'm always happy for the loudest voice. Fine, you want it to be a 3? It's yours, because it always comes out like this.
Well,
It's
and
a
the other
great
thing that it's
system.
valuable for is it shows you what people are thinking and what they're passionate about and who's got the energy for which topics, and it's wonderful.
I am going to ask for the next meeting, will you guys agree to, at least on the listserv, try for us to prioritize? Do we want to talk about the budget process, the bylaws, the annual meeting, or the minutes? And in what order? I don't even care if we do another one of these, if we can try and do it between the meetings so that we can be ready to rock and roll next time.
Well,
Okay.
could we? I don't know how the other board members feel about this, but I think the value for me of this whole conversation being completely self-serving is that I now have a visual example that I can share with boards about how to do this, and that's wonderful. But I wonder whether it's always worth having extra practice. So would you be willing to create a little chart, a Google Doc, where we can go and add our numbers so that on those 4 things, or 3 things, and play around with it again?
But I would love to have a little discussion too, as well as that, Gail, because I feel like, what does that mean? The addressing legal obligations of minutes and or annual meeting or bylaws or budget, and those 4 things in themselves have different imperatives.
Shall we blog this?
Shall we what? Did you say blog it?
Shall we blog this?
You mean as a group, or
No,
have you-
as me.
as you? Okay.
I guess what I'm asking is, in addition to the board talking about this between the meetings, do we want to do a quick blog post that says the board has prioritized for its next meeting that we're going to be talking about different processes for addressing legal obligations? Which would you think is the most important? Humanity?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
put it
What
that
does
way.
everybody else think?
Yeah, when you put it that way, it sounds great.
It will be a much faster blog post than the one on values that took me forever because, yeah, okay.
Is that up at that one?
No, it's going up. It's going up as soon as this meeting is over.
Okay. We
Okay.
will look for it.
So the decision at this point is that I will blog. Here are the 4 items. Which is most important and why?
So that on our agenda was number 6, which is the July meeting agenda. What discussion items would the board like to see? So we're working on that then via the blog, and we'll work together, the board, in whatever way we come up with. I don't know. I think that was, what did you say, Gail? A Google Docs?
Yeah.
So we'll do something together in the interim. And then the number 7 on the agenda, what issues did we discuss today? Do we want to blog about that? We've just accomplished that too. So it's now 2:57 New York time. We're in theory we have 3 minutes left. So can I ask each of you to look over notes you have, or you can look over your matrix and say what stood out for you, or whatever you have. Does anybody have any thoughts about what excited you? What do you want to continue to think about here? What was good about this meeting?
I have
People?
one. I have one.
Yeah?
At every point, we kept asking, without asking specifically, we kept reaching for what each of these made possible. So when somebody went to the, well, this isn't really that important, the reason it became important to somebody else was because of what it would make possible. And that really stood out for me, is that it is becoming more habitual to ask that question, but wait a minute, this will make possible for others, this will make possible a bigger conversation, what this will make possible for our board, rather than devolving, it's feeling like a habit now to keep coming back up to what the potential is in each of the items that were here. Some of these were immensely mundane, and to bring it out of the mundane of what could hurt us and to bring it up into the realm of what it makes possible for us and others is very energizing.
I agree.
That was mine as well. That I felt so excited just by taking the will this issue make someone's life easier, and that our list was board members, staff, and volunteers. Just opening up the possibility that there's a whole bunch of others that we really could be paying attention to that we aren't, and most organizations typically don't think about.
Right.
That made me feel very excited.
Yeah.
I had two things. One, I wanted to pass on Jane's last comment. And I also want to mention that there is a latency phenomena with the way YouTube now works, so that most of the comments tend to be further behind the timing of our conversation. But I think this particular comment works for reflection, and that is many organizations could improve risk oversight with similar discussions to your agenda setting one. And I think that is clear, at least in my mind. My reflection is the reminder and the added benefit of having guests at meetings, and the insight that comes from folks who aren't eating our dog food, so that we can sort of taste the water and see what's kind of happening and build on top of that. So that, in addition to everything else that everyone has said, is I'm looking at it in the context of that. You know, we're doing something here which in some ways, you mentioned mundane, just regular stuff that boards need to do. But at the same time, we're doing it in the context of, well, we're up on a stage doing this, and we have the Greek chorus who's singing to us, and adding commentary and so on. So I think that's really big.
It's interesting. Dave, you must know Joel Oros.
Yes.
Yeah. Joel was the first participating guest that we had sitting, and with Aaron. You were there. You were there with Joel. When I first broached the subject to Joel, and we had never even tried this, he said that one of the many benefits he can see of, and this was before we were streaming live, this was about a year ago, before we were doing any of this stuff that we're doing now, it was just having somebody like you in the room. And Joel said one of the many benefits he could see to boards of having participating guests who just come and go, and we were thinking about, you can never get all the brilliance that's in the world, so you could recruit how many board members, could you possibly recruit to get all of the wisdom you want? But what Joel said is that it will be a prevention from boards tending to breathe their own air and start to think that stuff is normal. And that it will keep a board talking about the bigger picture of an item rather than devolving into the craft. And I just was so struck by that as well today. And I loved your input, and I loved having it here.
And Dave, can we ask you for your reflections or your thoughts about being here?
I mean, I have enjoyed being with you. I appreciate the invitation. I'm participating, I guess, at multiple levels because I am obviously here watching a board meeting and just kind of thinking about the content of what's going on, and then there's the process layer as well. And the third layer for me is looking at sort of the technology in the vehicle and trying to understand the implications for boards and other similar kinds of dialogic processes of doing this. I haven't used the Hangout, the Google Hangout process or venue, I should say, before, so that's been very intriguing, and just I appreciate the opportunity to see how it's working and explore with you, and it's always interesting to hear what kinds of challenges boards are sorting out as they go through these things anyway.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you so much for coming. I think your comments have been terrific. I really appreciate
Spot
it.
on. Great.
Aaron, Sydney?
I have
Any
two.
thoughts?
I think one takeaway from the day today is just the experience of the Learning Lab. Being a Learning Lab as a board, I think working through the rubric or template today not only helped us work through what as priority, but I think it was, Gail, I think it was you that set the opportunity to actually go through a tool and show, as we talk about that tool, how we went through it. And I think that's most helpful not only for us, but it's helpful for us as we talk to others about it. And so that was just fantastic, and I think that would be tremendously helpful. And I think the other thing, too, is just at a high level having, from this particular meeting, a tangible result is also helpful. We always have great conversations. We always, feel that the needle is being moved forward. Today, we not only have that, but there's a tangible result to it. So those two things are my takeaways.
Great. I just want to echo Sydney's comments that this board meeting I will be watching back as a tool to make sure that I'm doing the matrix properly.
Absolutely.
Great.
You don't want me to have to say the watchword, do you?
The what word?
The watchword.
The watchword.
Yes, yes. The Dave, in our immersion classes, people get to the point where after about 2 days, their heads are just so full, and they just want to, as Aaron was saying, they just want to do it right. And finally, I look up and I say, okay, there's 5 words you guys have to remember. Now write this down because you have to remember this. And as you're thinking about these processes that we're learning, 5 words are, and I will be explicit, you can't fuck this up. And that's the 5 words, because when you're coming from a place of what's possible and you're coming from a place that's honoring others, you can't fuck this up. So Aaron, you can't fuck this up.
The 5 words.
And I'd like to add my final reflection that actually, Aaron or Sydney, if one of you would like to chair the next meeting, this is really an interesting process because I'm coming at it from a different way, and I feel like we should all be doing that all the time.
Sure.
And this is so fascinating for me because I haven't thought about chairing. It's like, which is why it's so important to do it. Because it took me a long time. I chaired a lot of boards, and it took me a long time to learn what boards do, because you're just told this is what you do, and it's almost all about means. And to actually have a discussion in which we discuss what's important, should we do it, how do we do it, what's the system, is something I actually, and I have to own it myself, I never did that with any board. Never asked him. I was chair, I told him. Or I was a board member, I waited to hear what it was or whatever. And this is fantastic because I think we've clearly demonstrated it's time consuming, but hey, all that other stuff is incredibly time consuming too. And I agree with Dave. How many times did I leave a meeting thinking, yeah, I could have gone to a movie, it's like, or whatever, that to own this process and to be part of the developing of it. And I assume it's something actually boards should do you know, on a regular basis in some way or another, once having defined basic processes, is to keep questioning, are we doing this and how are we doing this? So thank you very much. You know, people always say when they retire from something, oh, it's been a privilege, but I got to say, actually, it's been a privilege. Thank you.
And you've done brilliantly.
Oh, thank you. I was just mimicking you.
It
was fun.
Yeah, and a huge gratitude for the grace with which you led us.
And thank you for the incredibly great preparation that you, Hildy, and Dimitri provide for everything, because it's all here already for everybody.
Can I ask you guys one very, very quick logistical question? And then I'd like to know if there's somebody that wants to chair it. So I guess two logistical questions. One, is there somebody who'd like to chair next time? But the logistical question that I had is, are you guys finding, I know they're hard to read and I'll get better at making them, but are you finding the concentric circles, are you finding this helpful in creating context? Or is it only making things more crazy?
What's this? Is it the concentric circles you're talking about specifically?
Yes.
This thing.
I do, but I don't know that works for me. Does it work for other people?
Is it helping create context for you guys, or is it just making it more crazy, more muddy?
No, I thought it was fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know if everybody can see what Hildy's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have a color printer. That's all.
And there are two of them. So, but they were in the packet if you want to go back and look and see. It works.
As an outsider, Dave, did that help you at all, that graphic?
I found that it was useful because I was new to the conversation, and so it gave me insight into a pretty quick judgment of what was being explored.
Okay. Aaron, Sydney, I saw you making a face.
Oh, the face wasn't to you, though. It was to my dogs running around. Wondering what was going on. I did make a face.
In the long list of never assume.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. That's why I was looking down. I was like, what is going on? Anyway, I don't know. I mean, I think I probably would have. I probably needed more time for them to be most helpful. I think in general, that type of framework is helpful to me. At this time, I don't know if it was either here or there for this particular meeting.
Okay, Aaron?
I thought it read really well. I'm a visual person with this type of information, so I thought it was good.
Okay. So it's helpful to you? Cool. Does anybody want to chair next time? Aaron, Sydney, you have not?
I really can't make the determination if my schedule will allow it yet. I'm not quite sure what's coming up for me next month. I apologize.
Okay, so Aaron, number one, and who wants to back up in case Aaron can't do it?
No, I'm saying that.
No, I heard her say
Oh,
doesn't know.
can't. I'm sorry.
She doesn't know.
It broke up. I'm sorry.
I would say I like that. I like it.
That's the way you get
That's how you do
volunteers,
it.
right?
Yeah.
So we're already on to your alternate. You haven't
No,
even-
I can't. Okay, good. I'm glad you're saying yes.
I'm sorry.
If you pushed it any farther, I probably would just a cave.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, we can figure this out. Yep, go ahead.
You know what? I have a suggestion. Because next month, actually, imagine this, everybody. In this very room will be Hildy and Dimitri.
Oh my.
Yeah, so perhaps we should do like a show or something. Because I'm hearing that Sydney, you're not quite sure, and so perhaps between the three of us we could come up with some activity.
Oh, jeez, Louise. Okay, yeah. This is going to be scary. Right, well, I just want to reiterate
Sure.
really deep gratitude to you, Alexandra, and to you, Dave, for the wisdom that you guys both brought to this today, and to everybody else. And we will see you guys all next month.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
See you.
Bye-bye, everyone.